I sat in the heavy leather chair, the arms of it too stiff, the back too straight, the scent too ancient, just like every memory of this house. My grandparents' lawyer, Mr. Whitaker, stood near the fireplace, flipping through a thick set of documents. Everyone else in the room was silent. Silent, but vibrating with tension. I glanced around. My mother, Denise, was picking at her cuticles, her go-to move when trying not to scream. My Aunt Carla had her jaw locked so tightly I could see the veins in her neck. My older cousin Greg refused to look at anyone directly. His eyes darted to the bookshelf, the floor, the crystal chandelier. And my younger sister Natalie, arms crossed, face blank, had the kind of silence that felt like the calm before a storm. I was the only one seated in the inner circle, the only one directly in front of the lawyer. That alone said enough. I had never been the center of attention in this family. I'd never been wanted in the spotlight. But today, at the reading of my grandparents' will, every eye was either on me or watching me through sideways glances. And I hated it. Mr. Whitaker cleared his throat. As stipulated in the final version of the last will and testament of Walter and Evelyn Carter, dated March 4th of this year, we begin with an overview of the estate. He glanced up, likely expecting an interruption. But none came. Assets include the primary residence on Lakeview Drive, estimated at $1.3 million, two offshore accounts totaling $4.6 million, a private art collection currently appraised at just under $700,000, and a family trust containing multiple real estate investments across 3 states. My fingers twitched in my lap. I'd known they were well off. But this wasn't just comfort. This was legacy money. Now, he said, turning the page, on to the beneficiaries. Here it comes, I thought. I was ready to be disappointed. I always was. When Walter and Evelyn initially drafted this will, their intention was to divide the estate equally among their children, Denise Carter and Carla Mills. However, as of March 4th, a formal amendment was submitted, legally signed and witnessed. He paused, looking directly at me. All assets, everything listed, are hereby left to Emily Carter. No one breathed. Not a gasp. Not a scream. Not a what the hell. Just silence. And then, you've got to be ****ing kidding me. Aunt Carla stood up, so fast her chair screeched backward across the hardwood. Emily? Emily gets everything?
This has to be a mistake.
My parents would never. It's real, Mr. Whitaker interrupted calmly. I've reviewed it myself twice. Your parents were of sound mind. This was not sudden, nor coerced. They were very clear. My heart pounded so hard I couldn't hear for a moment. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something, but no words came out. I wasn't sure if I was grateful or horrified. You manipulated them, Natalie finally said, staring at me with narrowed eyes. You were always up there playing the sweet little granddaughter, helping with tea, reading books to Grandma, being the good one. I didn't know, I whispered. I swear I didn't. Don't lie to us, Carla snapped. You must have known something. No one does something this massive without talking it through. The lawyer raised a hand. The decision was entirely theirs. And for legal purposes, I have recordings of the session, sign letters, and psychiatric evaluations confirming mental clarity. But they weren't listening. Not to him. Not to logic. They were looking at me like I had stolen something from them. Like I had crept in the night and pulled the gold from under their pillows. You were the favorite, Greg said bitterly, not even trying to hide the venom. You always were. That was a lie. For most of my life, I'd felt like an afterthought. The daughter of the less successful sister. The shy one. The bookworm. The girl who wasn't loud enough at dinners and didn't drink enough at parties. The one who stayed behind after everyone left, helping Grandma fold tablecloths or tuck away old photographs. But apparently, that had meant more than I thought. They weren't angry because they didn't expect this. They were angry because deep down they did. That night, I went home to my tiny apartment across town. I stared at the folded copy of the will on my kitchen counter. I didn't feel rich. I felt terrified. The text started an hour later. Natalie, so what now, Princess Emily? Gonna buy yourself a new family too? Greg, you know they were drugged or something. You better get a second lawyer. Or maybe run. Uncle Ron, whom I hadn't even seen in years. Call me Acid. We need to talk about what your grandfather promised. I didn't respond to any of them. I poured a glass of water. My hands were still shaking. At 11:02 p.m., there was a knock at the door. 3 short, sharp knocks. I crept to the peephole. No one. I opened the door slowly. There was an envelope on the doormat. No stamp, no return address. Just my name. In old, familiar handwriting. My grandmother's. I stepped outside, looking up and down the empty hallway. The lights flickered above me. There was no one there. I picked up the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single note. Emily, if you're reading this, then we were right to be afraid. Do not trust anyone, not even your family, especially not them. My blood went cold. The note lay on my kitchen table under a paperweight, but my eyes kept drifting toward it as if it might move on its own. Do not trust anyone, not even your family, especially not them. I'd read the words at least 100 times since I'd found it last night. And every time, a new question would crawl its way into my brain, burrow deeper, and refuse to leave. What did they mean by "we were right to be afraid"? What were my grandparents scared of? I tried to piece together anything strange from the last few visits, but all I could remember was the softness of my grandfather's voice, the way Grandma's hands trembled when she touched the lace curtains, and how she looked at me, just a week before her stroke, with something more than just warmth. Was it fear? Regret? Warning? I hadn't seen it then, but I saw it now. That morning, I sat curled up on the worn couch, my laptop open beside me. I had a message from Mr. Whitaker. Call me as soon as you can. There's something else I need to discuss with you, something urgent. I hadn't called yet. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Instead, I kept staring at my phone, watching the messages pile up. Natalie, you always thought you were so innocent, but I see you now. Mom, you think you've won, but this isn't over. Carla, I know what you did. I hope you can live with yourself. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to respond. My stomach twisted. Not with guilt, but with dread. By the afternoon, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I called Mr. Whitaker. He answered on the first ring. Emily, he said, voice tight. Thank you for calling back. I didn't want to put this in writing. What is it? There was a long pause. Then, are you alone? Yes, I whispered, already standing up to double-check the locks on my door. I received a phone call this morning, from a number I didn't recognize. The man on the line knew about the will, but he also mentioned something that no one outside the family should know. My heart thudded. What did he say? He asked if I had the second copy. Second copy of what? The will. My blood went cold. There's another copy? Not exactly. What your grandparents had me prepare was a sort of personal addendum. Instructions. Details they didn't want to make public. They asked me to keep it sealed until 30 days after the official reading. But someone knows it exists. Who? I don't know. But they threatened to get it one way or another. A chill ran down my spine. Mr. Whitaker, I said, voice trembling. What did they put in that letter? He hesitated again. I haven't read it. I legally can't open it until the date arrives. But if someone wants it badly enough to threaten me over it, then I'd wager there's more to your inheritance than just money and property. The line went silent. My ears rang. Then he added softly, Be careful, Emily. Not everything you inherited is a blessing. 2 days later, I visited the Lakeview Drive estate. My estate, apparently. I hadn't planned to come back so soon. But something about the note, the phone call, and the way I was being watched every time I stepped outside made me feel like this house, this cold, haunted house, was the only place that might hold any real answers. As I pulled up the long, tree-lined driveway, memories attacked me like sharp pins, running through the autumn leaves as a child. Sitting on the sunroom bench while Grandpa told me stories about his Navy days. helping Grandma press flowers between the pages of her old prayer book. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The air was stale, heavy with silence. I walked through the foyer, fingers brushing against the wallpaper. I didn't know what I was looking for, but my instinct said, start in the library. The library had always been my grandfather's sanctuary. Shelves from floor to ceiling. Leather-bound journals. A locked drawer in the desk I'd never seen opened.
I walked to it now.
Kneeling, I examined the brass lock. No key in sight. I tried tugging it open, nothing. Then I remembered something. A few months before his death, Grandpa had handed me an old brass coin. For luck, he said with a wink.
I didn't understand why at the time.
I dug into my purse, pulled out the coin, held it in my palm. I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a thin edge, like the rim could twist. I turned it.
Click.
The coin split open to reveal a tiny key. My stomach flipped. I fit it into the drawer lock and turned. Inside, I found two items, an old cassette tape labeled June 12, 1994, and a folded map. The map had marks drawn in red ink. Circles, arrows, and a note scribbled in my grandmother's unmistakable handwriting. If something happens to us, start here. It was never about the money. My pulse thundered. I didn't even notice the sound behind me until it was too late. A creak, a breath, a shadow. I turned. Someone was in the house. I froze. Someone was definitely inside the house with me. The sound hadn't come from the front entrance. It was deeper, somewhere down the hallway past the kitchen. A creak, soft but deliberate. Not the moan of old wood shifting, but the careful tread of someone trying not to be heard. I slid the drawer shut, pocketed the tape and map, and stood quickly. I had two choices: stay and face whoever it was or run. I backed toward the hallway leading to the garage, my footsteps quiet, heart thudding so loudly it felt like it would betray my presence on its own. I didn't make it far before I saw the figure.
A man.
Just at the edge of the corridor. Dressed in black, hoodie pulled low. He didn't move. Just stood there, like he was deciding something too. Then he spoke. You're not supposed to be here yet. The voice wasn't familiar. At least, not exactly. Who are you? I demanded. No answer. Just one step closer. I turned and bolted. Out through the back door, slamming it behind me, across the patio and down the gravel path toward the trees. I didn't stop until I reached the neighbor's yard and rang their doorbell over and over. An old woman named Judith answered, startled. I didn't even wait to explain before saying, please, someone's in the house. I need to call the police. She let me in without question. The police arrived 7 minutes later. No one was found inside. No sign of forced entry. No broken windows. But I knew what I'd heard, what I'd seen. The officer, Officer Jenkins, took my statement calmly, but clearly didn't believe I was in real danger. Probably just a squatter, ma'am. Big, empty property like that. Happens all the time. I didn't argue. I just nodded and pretended I believed him too. But I knew better. That man, he knew something. He knew I was coming. He wasn't there to rob anything. He was there for me. Back in my apartment, I locked the doors, double-checked the windows, and sat on my bed with a cassette tape and map in front of me. I didn't own a cassette player. So, I called the only person I could think of who might still have one. My high school friend, Jenna. Jenna was the type who collected weird stuff. She had an entire corner of her apartment dedicated to vintage electronics and vinyl records. When I asked if I could come over to use an old player, she didn't even ask why. Just said, sure, I've got like 4. I went straight over. She handed me a small handheld recorder and some headphones. You okay? She asked. You look pale. I'm fine, I lied. I slid the cassette in and pressed play. The tape hissed. Then I heard my grandmother's voice. Emily, if you're listening to this, we're probably gone. My chest tightened. We didn't know who to trust. Not for a long time. But you were different. You listened. You noticed things. That's why we left it all to you. There's something our family has kept hidden for decades, something your mother and aunt are determined to erase. Your grandfather and I, we couldn't stop it. but maybe you can. I blinked back tears. The voice was so soft, so familiar. But what she was saying, there's a set of journals hidden in the guest house attic. The combination to the lockbox is your grandfather's Navy number. He always told you stories about the war, remember? Inside those journals is everything. The names, the deals, the reason people have been pretending to be family when they're not. The tape stopped. I hit rewind, but it wouldn't go further. The rest of the tape was blank. I sat there in Jenna's apartment, shaking. "Emily," Jenna said softly, "what the hell is going on?" I swallowed. I think my family is hiding something bigger than money, bigger than anything I could have imagined. The next morning, I returned to the Lakeview estate. This time, I came prepared with a flashlight, gloves, and pepper spray. I made my way to the guest house, tucked behind the garden hedges, a place I hadn't been in years. I remembered it as a cozy little space, filled with dust and old holiday decorations. Now it felt like something else, like it was holding its breath. I climbed the creaky stairs to the attic. At first, I didn't see anything unusual, just boxes, cobwebs, and the smell of mothballs. But then I spotted an old trunk in the corner. I walked over and knelt beside it. 3 brass dials. A combination lock. Your grandfather's Navy number. I tried the number he always told me in stories. 571.
Click.
It opened. Inside were 6 leather-bound journals and a velvet pouch. I opened the first journal, and everything changed. The journal wasn't just personal reflections or poetry like I expected. It was records. Detailed records. My grandfather had documented illegal financial activities within the family for over 40 years. Property bought in other people's names. Money funneled through shell companies. Payoffs to county officials. And then came the worst part. A note about a fire in 1994. The barn wasn't an accident. Carla's idea. Denise helped her cover it up. 3 people died. All swept under the rug. Evelyn threatened to go to the police. That's when the threat started. That's when we knew we had to stay quiet for Emily's sake. My mouth went dry. I flipped further. Greg is involved now too. We tried to stop him. He laughed. Said we were old and wouldn't be around much longer. I couldn't breathe. My entire family, they weren't just greedy. They were criminals. And now they knew I had everything. They knew I had access to this. The velvet pouch inside the trunk contained a flash drive. I didn't open it. Not yet. I needed to think. I needed to run. I shoved everything into my bag and turned to leave the attic, and saw someone standing at the bottom of the stairs. Natalie. Her eyes locked onto mine. "Give me the journals," she said quietly. "Natalie, don't lie to me." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but rage. "How did you know I was here? We've been watching you. All of us. We knew you wouldn't stop until you found out the truth. But you don't understand what you're playing with, Emily. You burned down a barn," I snapped, tears stinging my eyes. "You killed people. You think this family got wealthy by playing fair?" She spat. "You think all those gifts, all those vacations just happened? We did what we had to do. Grandpa documented it because he got weak. Grandma let him. And now you're about to make the same mistake. Get out of my way." She didn't move. "I'm serious, Nat, move. Or I'll scream this entire house down." She stepped back just enough for me to pass. But before I left, she said one last thing. "You're not safe anymore, Emily. You're not one of us." And for the first time in my life, I believed her. The car ride back felt like driving through a war zone, except the battlefield wasn't outside. It was in my head. Everything I thought I knew had crumbled. My family wasn't just greedy. They were dangerous. Murder, fraud, cover-ups, threats, and I was now the enemy because I knew too much. But they didn't know I had the flash drive. Not yet. I drove straight to the only person I thought might help me, Daniel Morrison, my grandfather's former attorney. He was the only person Grandma ever trusted with sensitive things. The man had retired years ago, but I still had his number saved from when we handled probate. I called him from a burner phone I picked up on the way. "Emily, His voice was calm but cautious. Is everything all right?
No.
Not even close. Come to my office. Now. Daniel's office was now a converted room in his home, surrounded by dusty legal books and the smell of old leather and pipe smoke. I handed him the flash drive and one of the journals. He read a few pages and his expression went from skeptical to horrified in seconds. My God. I waited. Emily, if half of this is true, your family isn't just going to contest the will. They're going to try and destroy you. This implicates half the county. These are people who've been in power for decades. This isn't just a family squabble anymore. It's a political time bomb. What do I do? His eyes met mine, steady and grave. You go public. But you need protection. This needs to go to the state's attorney, not local police. And you need to disappear for a few days. I nodded, even though my stomach dropped at the thought. Daniel copied the flash drive and emailed a secure backup to a friend in the DA's office. He then handed me a manila envelope. Go to this address. It's a safe house. Stay off your phone. Don't talk to anyone you don't trust. I'll handle the rest. But disappearing was easier said than done. By the time I pulled into the safe house driveway, an old cabin near the border, my phone had already rung 9 times. Unknown numbers. A blocked call. 1 voicemail. It was Natalie's voice. You think you're brave? You think Grandpa left that stuff for you because you were special?
No.
He left it because he wanted you to suffer for what he couldn't stop. You were always the weakest. And now you're going to pay for exposing us. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just turned the phone off and threw it in the river behind the cabin. 3 days passed in silence. I read more of the journals. Learned about secret bank accounts, offshore properties, bribes, hush money. Even a judge who had been bought off to dismiss a wrongful death case from the barn fire. And one name kept coming up over and over again. Carla. My mother. She wasn't just complicit. She was the mastermind. On the 4th night, the silence broke. I heard a car. Then a knock. Not on the front door. On the back. My breath caught in my throat. I peeked through the kitchen curtain and froze. It was her. My mother. Dressed in a coat, her face drawn, hair pulled back tight like she always wore it in court. I didn't open the door, but I let her talk. Emily, she called softly. I know you're in there. Please. I don't want to fight. I said nothing. I just want to explain. Explain what? I finally shouted through the door. That you killed people and covered it up? That you stole from our grandparents and then pretended to care when they died. A pause. Then, you think this was about money? It was survival, Emily. You have no idea what our family was involved in before you were even born. You think Grandpa is a hero? He started all of it. I have proof, Mom, she sighed. I know. That's why I'm here. I grabbed the pepper spray in one hand and my flashlight in the other. Don't come in here. Sweetheart, she said, her voice suddenly chilling. If you give those journals to the wrong people, it won't just destroy us. It'll destroy you. You'll be dragged into court, into the media. You'll lose your job, your friends, everything. That sounds like a threat. It's a fact. Then she walked away. Not scared. Not remorseful. Just certain. And that scared me more than anything. The next morning, I called Daniel from a payphone. He answered in a whisper. They know. My blood ran cold. They found my house ransacked. Took my computer. They're desperate. But listen carefully, Emily, the DA is ready to talk. They're flying someone out to meet you. Tomorrow morning. But I didn't get to tomorrow morning. That night, someone set fire to the cabin. I was asleep when the smell of smoke woke me. I barely escaped through the bathroom window, coughing, blind, barefoot in the woods. I didn't stop running for miles. When I finally reached a small diner at dawn, I looked like a ghost, soot-covered, bleeding, shaking. The waitress called an ambulance. I gave a fake name, but I knew. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was a war. When I finally met with the DA's representative, a woman named Michelle Landers, she confirmed everything. Yes, we've had suspicions about the Carters for years. But no one would talk. No one had evidence.
Until now.
She promised me protection. She promised justice. But even as she said those words, I felt something shift inside me. This wouldn't end in a courtroom. This would end in a confrontation. Face to face. I requested one last meeting with my mother. Michelle advised against it. But I needed to see her one more time. Not as her daughter, but as the woman who would end her legacy. We met in a neutral location, a church basement of all places. She arrived late, as always, wearing black, like she was already mourning what she was about to lose. I sat across from her, journal in front of me, flash drive beside it. "I'm giving it all to the DA," I said calmly. She smiled. Not kind. Not surprised. "You really believe they'll protect you?" "I believe they'll destroy you." Her jaw clenched, and for the first time, her mask slipped. "You want to be the good guy, Emily? You want to be the martyr?"
Fine.
"But don't say I didn't try to warn you." "I don't need your warnings. I need you to confess." A pause. Then she laughed. "You think you've won. But the truth, sweetheart, is that there's always another secret."
She leaned in.
"And I hope you're ready for the last one." I never saw my mother again after that day. Not in person, anyway. The very next week, the district attorney filed charges against multiple members of the Carter family: embezzlement, witness tampering, obstruction of justice, even suspicion in multiple cold cases reopened after the flash drive contents were reviewed. News vans swarmed our sleepy town. My family name became national headlines. Dynasty of Deception. The Carter Empire falls. Heiress turned whistleblower. People called me brave. Some called me stupid. Many just stared. But none of them really understood what it had cost. Daniel went into protective custody the day after my mother vanished. She'd gone off the grid completely. No trail, no witnesses. Not even Natalie had heard from her. Not that I trusted a word Natalie said. I was relocated, twice, after an anonymous threat landed on the porch of the first safe house. A single bullet casing in a gift box. No note. Just intent. The DA insisted it was an intimidation tactic. That she'd be found. That I was safe now. But I never felt safe again. I watched my family fall apart from a distance. Natalie was arrested on financial crimes. My cousin Brad turned on the family to get a reduced sentence. My Uncle James tried to claim mental illness to escape jail time. My father, always the passive one, disappeared to Mexico with a second family I hadn't even known existed. And through it all, the weight never lifted. Even in the silence, I heard their voices. Even in safety, I felt hunted. 6 months passed before I returned to the old estate. It was empty now, boarded up, its contents seized or auctioned. But I had a legal right to the property. It was still mine, technically. Every brick, every shadow. I walked through the house barefoot. The air smelled like dust and ghosts. In the attic, I found something that hadn't been taken. A box. Wooden. Carved with initials. WEC. My grandfather's. Inside, wrapped in old velvet, was a photo of me, age 5, sitting on his lap. And under it a sealed letter. I sat on the attic floor and read it in silence. "Emily, if you're reading this, then everything I feared has happened.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to fix things before they reached you. I wanted to protect you from the truth. But I failed. They got to me. And you're the only one left who can tell the story right. You were always different.
Honest.
Stronger than you knew. That's why I left it all to you. Not just the money. The truth. The fight. The legacy. Burn it down if you have to. Start over. Make the Carter name mean something else. Or don't. Walk away if that's what saves you.
Just don't let them win."
I'm so proud of you.
Grandpa.
I cried like a child that night. Not because I missed him. Not because of what I'd lost. But because for the first time in months I felt seen. All the betrayals. All the lies. All the danger. It hadn't been for nothing. He had believed in me. And maybe, just maybe, I could believe in myself again. I sold the estate a few weeks later. Gave most of the money to the families who'd been hurt by my family's crimes. Set up a trust for victims of legal corruption. I didn't want blood money. I just wanted peace. I moved to the coast, changed my name, tried to build a life again. I volunteered at a shelter, wrote a memoir under a pseudonym. It became a bestseller, but no one knew it was me. That's how I wanted it. No spotlight, no praise, just silence. Until the day I received the envelope. No return address. Inside, a photo of her, my mother, smiling, standing outside a church in Prague. A note attached, handwritten. Still watching, sweetheart. Still proud of you. But remember, even monsters have mothers. I stared at the photo for a long time. And for the first time in a year, I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it never ends. Because she wanted me to be afraid again. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I burned the photo. Then I locked the door behind me and whispered to the silence. Let her watch. I'm not running anymore.